In this video, I want to share with you my top 5 favorite podcasts that I'm listening to right now in 2022. The first podcast that I really recommend is How I Built This by Guy Raz. Now, this is a business-focused podcast where they bring in people who started up companies and they kind of go throughout their entire journey of how they kind of started up their company from the beginning all the way until they were really, really successful. I really like this podcast, and not just because they bring in super big companies like Bumble or Atlassian, but they also make it really relatable and they go step by step back in the days where they were just normal individual people working a paycheck 9 to 5 and their journey towards success in creating a multi-million-dollar company. The most important lesson that I learned from this podcast is that anyone can probably be successful and you never really know when success is going to come. The most important thing is that you actually have to get started and actually do things so that you can actually get this luck. If you don't ever try, if you never buy a lottery ticket, you're never going to win. My favorite episode from this podcast is the one with Sal Khan from Khan Academy. Definitely start there if you haven't watched this podcast already. Now, the second podcast that I've been listening to recently is Ali Abdaal's Deep Dive podcast. Not only is it business focused, but it's also focused around being better every single day, which is my entire thing. They focus on relationships, they focus on love, they focus on finances and structure and all of these different things. The most important lesson that I learned from Ali Abdaal's podcast is that it's never too late to start something new. Just because you set out a career to do one particular thing, it does not mean that you need to do that thing forever. You don't really need to do it for life. You aren't stuck just because you choose something. Now, the third podcast that I've really been enjoying in 2022 is The Property Couch by Bryce and Ben. Now, these two are property professionals who are operating inside of Australia, and basically their entire podcast is on educating and supporting people in Australia to actually learn and make financial decisions based around property. Now, at the beginning of the year, I knew nothing about real estate. I had no clue what stamp duty was, APRA, capital gains tax, or negative gearing. I had no clue. Whenever I got into a conversation, I would always be like,
property market's pretty bad right now, aren't they?
That's interesting. You know, stamp duty is a bit high. If I was to sell property, then the capital gains tax would be a hefty one.
You have no clue what you're talking about whatsoever, do you?
Now, the most important lesson that I've learned from this podcast is to use the Pareto principle, which I've talked about extensively already, but it's essentially the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the value of the property comes from the location that you pick, and 20% of the value of the property will come from the actual property itself. If you want to find out more, please check out that podcast. I'll leave a link down below so you can check them out. Speaking of the 80-20 rule, as you know, only 20% of you will make up 80% of those likes down there. So make sure that you're actually part of that 20% and leave me a thumbs up if you're finding this video useful. The fourth podcast that I've been really enjoying in 2022 is The Minimalists by Ryan and Joshua. This is one of the first podcasts that I ever listened to way back before, probably back when I was in high school, which is like 6 to 7 years now. But I do listen to them every now and then to kind of revitalize and look through the meaning of minimalism and kind of see if I've strayed too far away from my initial purpose and the value that I have in my life. Each one of their videos, they go through different aspects of minimalism and how to apply them in different areas of your life, whether that's your finances, in your relationships, in the stuff that you own. There are a lot of different things that they go through, and I really do recommend that you try and implement some of these lessons into your life. Now, the most important thing that I've learned from these podcasts is that minimalism is not necessarily living life with less, but it's actually living life with more. It's just what you have less of and what you have more of. You have less of the things that you don't actually find value in. You have more of the things that bring you happiness and joy. I've done a video on this already. Make sure to check it out after this video is done. The fifth and final podcast that I found a lot of value in 2022 is Think Fast, Talk Smart by Matt Abrahams. Matt's a lecturer of communication at Stanford Business School, and he kind of brings in different experts to talk about ways in order to be a better communicator, better at public speaking, and to be more confident and have more confidence when you're actually doing speeches. One of the biggest skills that I think everyone should have is the ability to communicate effectively and clearly with other people. I think it's one of the most underrated skills that people can have, and I think it's applicable no matter what industry that you're in. Personally, I found that this podcast is really, really good at helping me develop my own skills of public speaking, because I'm a teacher, and one of the most important things is getting up and performing and being a very confident speaker, which is is something that I feel that is not really natural to me because I'm somewhat of an introvert. And so as a result, I do need help in order to develop the skills of public speaking. The most important lesson that I've learned from this podcast is that to be a good communicator, you literally have to get out of your own way. A lot of the time when you're trying to do presentations and you're trying to do all of these communication things, you try to be perfect. In your head, you say, I have this script that I need to follow, and if it's not perfect, then I'm crap. One of the ways that you can kind of prevent this is instead of reacting to situations, respond to situations instead. Ask your audience, what do you think? Like kind of probe them, kind of like a conversation rather than you just talking. So those have been my favorite podcasts in 2022. Which one was your favorite? Let me know down in the comments below. Maybe it's not on the list. I'd love to hear it. Now, if you're looking for other videos to watch on ways that you can be better every single day, make sure to check out this playlist right here or this playlist over here. Otherwise, I'll see you over there.